Hello, friends. Let's talk about our liver today. I would love to do a talk about the liver because there are some really surprising symptoms of having a liver challenge that without even realizing that, it could be your liver. And so people go like, oh, well, I'm like really sensitive to perfumes. And every time I go into Walgreens or CVS or whatever, I get this headache, right? And so it can be really telling that is really your liver at play here. And so I'm just gonna wait for a couple of more minutes for more people to join us, and then we can talk a little bit more about symptoms. And what I want to talk about today is really give you an idea of what are some of the things you want to look for, just beyond looking at your markers, your liver enzyme markers in your lab work. They are hugely important and very, very effective and very helpful, but they don't tell the full picture. So that's when we want to look at your symptoms as well. Let's talk about hormones and how it impacts your thyroid health, how it impacts your estrogen dominance, how it impacts your menopause. And then we're going to talk about some herbs that you can bring in on a daily basis. Then I want to tell you about a formula we've just released for liver that has 4 compounds in that. You can get it from us. You can get it from anyone else that has these kind of compounds in there as well to support your liver. So let's dive in. And, it's kind of ironic in a way that I'm talking, we chose with a team to talk about the liver this month, right? And it's also the month when my dad just passed away. And my dad passed away effectively from liver cancer. However, most liver cancer is actually secondary. So there's always something else that is happens prior to that. Is another cancer. And so his primary cancer most likely was colon cancer. And if you have history of colon cancers in your family, please do get your colonoscopy done. Age 40, 45. I got mine done last year, and to my big surprise, in spite of my lifestyle, I had 3 polyps removed. They were all benign polyps, but it starts that way. So anyway, so that's and it's interesting that my dad passed away from liver cancer, and I've shared this very openly online with all of you, and you might have seen that post about like how to put your right hand right. And let me just get up and show it to you. You put your right hand like over your liver here, and this is where the liver is under your rib cage, right? And that's like it's a protective mechanism in a way, and it goes behind here a tiny bit as well. And so there's a practice in traditional Chinese medicine of smiling to your liver. And the importance of that is pretty profound because, the liver in traditional Chinese medicine is perceived as the anger organ, right? And so when you carry a lot of anger with you, or you have people in your life who, are perpetually angry, a lot of times their liver gets affected in a big way. And I know many of you, thank you for the hundreds of comments about my dad and the condolences. And I appreciate all of that. Thank you. It's never easy to lose a parent, right? And I think in his case, it also came with a place, for me, it also came with a lot of realizations. And that is the fact that, he married a woman who was suffering, who was very vivacious and super lively. And and the big dance soul of the party. I mean, there was no party that will start without my mother, kind of a thing. However, as it often happens, she's also suffering from borderline personality disorder, and it's something that has been really haunting him his entire life. And so much so, she's traumatized him so much throughout the years that he carried that trauma with him until the very last days. In fact, when I was there last year to spend some time with him, he kept talking about the things that my mother had done, 15, 20, 30 years ago. And I said to my dad, I said, you're traumatized. You've never addressed your trauma. And I think he didn't even realize that, right? Back in the days, there was just no proper diagnostic tools. And he's also that generation where therapy is like, therapy is for crazy people. Like, I don't need therapy. I'm not crazy. So he never sought any support system. And, I have a very strong feeling that a big contributing factor towards his demise of his liver it was the fact that he carried so much anger against my mother for so many years. Unresolved trauma, unresolved anger. On the surface, my dad was not an angry man. On the surface, my dad was actually, very highly intellectual. He was a lawyer. He was a diplomat. He was very well read. I love talking history to him, with him. And it's just, and just a highly engaged and turned on man, following worldly affairs and all that kind of stuff, and always super helpful to all of us as family. But that anger was always there. So as we were talking about anger today, and I'm going to be talking a little bit more from the physiological side of liver, but I just want to kind of remind you that we all energy, right? Energy impacts us. And I'm not talking about like EMF here. I'm talking about just emotions. I mean, there's so many books now that are available about the connection between trauma and disease, and fear and disease, and and The Body Keeps the Score is like one of them. I know many of you know that book, right? And goes on and on and on. And I'm not in the energetic space here at all, but I think it will be very limiting of me not to recognize the fact that energy and your own sense of emotions and feelings can play a huge role when it comes to your different organs. And in this case, like if you're this one person who's walking around just bloody angry all the time and pissed at everyone, that has to change just for your own sake. And having said that, I also don't really know many people who have incredibly well-balanced hormones while they're walking around really angry. Doesn't happen. So anyway, so let's talk about the liver. The liver is a beautiful organ. And did you guys know that it pumps 1.6 liters? So that's almost like 3 will be pints of blood every minute. So it's a very hard working organ. It's also an organ that it's one of those that you can lose half of your liver, let's say, to cancer, and it has the ability to regrow itself. I mean, the skin also regrows to a certain extent, right? But the liver is just but it is a hardworking organ, so we have to support it. We have to give it some TLC. And one way of knowing that your liver is working hard and it's not the same what it used to be in your 20s and 30s is like this very simple analogy of this. Like most of us were in some kind of youthful craziness, right? And so whether you were in college or you were working in your 20s or whatever it was, remember, like you would just go out and like have drinking parties and stuff, and you could go out on a say Wednesday night, go and have a lot of drinks, wake up on a Thursday morning, and you're like, okay, well, I just I feel a little bit hungover, but I'm okay to start the day. I mean, try to have 5 or 6 tequilas now, and how you're gonna feel the next morning? Not the same, right? And so a lot of people don't make the connection that the reason why you may not be responding so well to alcohol anymore is actually because your liver is just not as efficient and effective at neutralizing toxins as it was when you were in your 20s and early 30s. And this gets worse and worse as we age, because this is the time when, think of the liver like a sieve, right? When you're making a bone broth or vegetable broth and you're just like straining your vegetables through the strainer, the gunk that's left behind, like even if you shake it out, right? Is the fact is also that there's still gunk that's still left there, right? And that thing accumulates over years. And so as we age, we just have to make it a conscious effort to work on our liver more so than ever before. So yes, so you can, we did with your lab work, and we did a partnership with Dr. Alan Hopkins. We just did a webinar. I think it was like 2 weeks ago, actually. It was right the day before my dad passed. So it was on the 12th of January. We did a webinar on how to test for various things, and liver markers was one of the big things for sure. And that's that there are some markers there, enzyme markers that will show you if you have, for example, fatty liver. That's non-alcoholic fatty liver. That means your liver is struggling not because of alcohol, but because of, guess what? Not fats, even though it's called fatty liver, and it does become fatty, but it's actually because of sugar and carbohydrates. So That's one of the ways of knowing that your liver struggles a little bit. However, a lot of times these markers don't reflect the entire health of the liver, and they also will show up positive when it's kind of a little bit late in the game. And so there is, however, a whole bunch of symptoms that you can go by, and I'm going to read them out from my book, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, in the liver chapter, about some of the symptoms that you can start paying more attention to, okay? So symptoms of liver challenges. First thing is you experiencing more hormonal imbalances than an average person. But one thing that is very telling, I have found, is that when you have an adverse reaction to hormone replacement therapy, so like, you're being put on a patch, or you're doing progesterone, or your sensitivity to birth control pills back in the day, right? Or if you were still doing them, I hope not. Adverse reactions to that could be very indicative your liver is just not able to process those hormones. Severe menopausal symptoms, PMS, estrogen dominance, mood swings. This is some of those. Blood sugar problems. One of the things that the liver does is also helps us to manage our blood sugar levels, which are huge. So the symptoms here would include sugar cravings, hypoglycemia, type 2 diabetes, energy slumps, and waking in the middle of the night. Immune system functions, allergies. So if how many of you here have experienced that, like, when you were younger, you had no problem with like allergies and stuff, but then ever since you turned to whatever, 40, 50, you suddenly have a lot more reactions to things, right? And so the liver could be an important element here. So whether it's seasonal or whether it's environmental triggered allergies that can be due to poor liver function, chemical sensitivities. I gave an example, like unable to stand fumes from cleaning products or perfumes, chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, frequent illness. And then we have digestive issues. So no hunger in the morning, gallstones, inability to digest fatty foods because your liver produces bile, which then gets stored by your gallbladder. You are sensitive to alcohol and caffeine, although that could also be due to a SNP, a genetic SNP that can be causing that. Acid reflux, bloating, and constipation. And then we have abnormal metabolism of fats, abnormal levels of fats in the blood, such as high LDL cholesterol and reduced HDL cholesterol, which is your good cholesterol, elevated triglycerides, blocked arteries, fatty liver, as indicated by the ALT and AST enzymes in blood work, obesity. Mood and other nervous system related issues, anger and irritability, foggy brain, overheating, frequent headaches. By the way, the overheating here could also be to do with hot flashes. We've had a lot of women say that ever since they started working on their liver, their hot flashes has gotten much better. External signs, skin rash, furry tongue, bad breath, acne and rosacea, yellow, red, and itchy eyes. That's a big one. When I was when I did a detox in Thailand, that was like 12, 13 years ago. And that was part of the reason why we created our detox program. It was so interesting to see that people who completed the program, like you could see who was already on the coming out of the program and they are feeling great. And their eyes were so bright and white. And people who were coming in, their eyes were pretty yellow. Easy bruising, that could be also a good one. And then brown spots on the hands, back, and face, so like you have these kind of like roundish, brownish spots. That could be aging spots, but it could also be liver spots. So Beatrice is saying, I have allergies now, never did before. Yeah, so it's inflammation, and inflammation is a very taxed liver. So that's those are some of the symptoms. Now let's talk a little bit about liver and estrogen dominance and thyroid. So one of the reasons why all my books, like Overcoming Estrogen Dominance and Cooking for Hormone Balance, both the books are based on three principles, like a three-legged stool, right? That if you want to stay comfortably on a stool, all the legs need to be well in place, and those three things are: your digestive health has to be in a really good shape. Number 2 is going to be your liver health. Number 3 is your blood sugar balance. And the reason why I say these three is because if one of them is off, it's really impossible. It's impossible for you to enjoy really good hormonal health. And so for that reason, we when we design, for example, meal plans, is always around the whole philosophy of getting these three things under control. So there is so let's talk about the liver and estrogen dominance. So the liver is essential in clearing your estrogens as well, right? Because remember, estrogens are not a bad thing. We need estrogens as women to function. However, how we break those estrogens down can make a very big difference. And in the case of the liver, you have phase 1 liver detoxification that needs to be upregulated, and then you have phase 2 liver detoxification that then needs to be bound up. There has to be substances that bind up the different estrogens, as well as testosterone and thyroid hormone, in order for you to go to phase 3, which is pooping out your hormones. So there's a huge connection, right, between the liver and estrogen dominance. In fact, when I was first diagnosed with estrogen dominance because of a hair loss, I didn't really know what was going on. And I remember starting researching estrogen dominance, and I was so surprised to see that the liver plays such a huge role. And I was like, wow, why nobody's talking about that? Like, this is so fascinating. At the same time, you're like, oh, wait, there's so many things that we can do, right? So there's a few things you can do to support your liver. The first thing is to do the elimination diet. I talked about the elimination diet last week. We did almost an hour-long call, so I'm not going to talk about this anymore. But the whole purpose is that whatever your digestion is struggling with, that's going to get passed on in the liver. That's the short version of that, right? And so when you do the elimination diet, your liver immediately gets a lot of release from that as well. The second thing is, what would happen is that the other thing I want to talk about is the liver connection with menopause. So remember how I said that as we age, our liver just deteriorates in some ways, right? And the support is needed. So a lot of women who are in menopause have said to us that ever since they started doing just the liver protocol, how many things have changed for them so quickly, right? And hot flashes got so much better. Their memory improved, their sleep improved. I mean, sleep improves a lot for people who are struggling with a poorly digestive, poor liver function. So another really good reason to support your liver that way. So I know where I lost my train of thought was I was talking about how to support your liver. So the first thing, you want to do the elimination diet, remove a lot of the inflammatory foods so that you can really support your liver and reduce the toxic load on it, right? The second thing that you can do is start incorporating foods and vegetables that are really beneficial for the liver. And all my books always feature, foods that are very efficacious for the liver, such as all the cruciferous vegetables, right? So all the cabbages and kale and collard greens and arugula and radishes and turnips. And so there is a lot of those are all vegetables that bind up estrogens, that have a great efficacy for work. They work great on the liver. They contain also a substance called aldehyde, which supports the liver tremendously when it comes to clearing estrogen. So that's not a really cool feature about them. And they have a better quality to them. The third best thing you can do is start incorporating bitter herbs into your diet. So whether you do that through digestive bitters, and we sell some digestive bitters in our store that taste really good, but you can also just make a simple tea that's made with like dandelion root or burdock root, or has got fennel in it, or it contains artichoke leaf, right? Gentian is another classical, you spell it Gentin. Gentian is a classical, but it's not a very tasty tea. I'll just tell you that straight up, unless you like something really bitter. So those are some of the things that you can, do. And you can walk into a health food store and pick digestive teas or liver teas, as they call it, right? And they will typically have those very herbs that I'm talking about. And having a tea or two every day after a meal can just do a lot of really wonderful things. The other thing I like to do, which is the reason why we formulated our latest product, it's called Daily Liver Support. And we call it daily because, you don't have to do like huge detoxes. And, it's like, I believe that it's a little bit like, I have a challenge with people who do these like crazy detoxes for like once a year, right? And then they go back and they kind of binge and drink a lot. And it kind of defeats the purpose, because to me, I see liver support as a little bit like cleaning and keeping your house nice and neat, right? Like, do you do a clean out in your house once a year? if you do, that's probably not a very clean house, right? Or you do a little bit every day, or you do it like once a week. You have, maybe somebody coming and helping you to clean the house. You do it yourself. However you do it, it's a systematic, progressive thing of maintaining your liver health. That's a reason why we call the product Daily Liver Detox. So the cool thing is it only contains 4 compounds, and if you want to support us, I will be eternally grateful. And if you prefer some other brand and you want to get them maybe as individual compounds, it's great too. I just want to make sure that I want to just want to call out a certain ingredients that really have like the magical the magic here, right? They do the magical work here. So the first one is milk thistle. And milk thistle, as an herbalist, let me just say that milk thistle is a very special herb in many ways. In fact, when my father was diagnosed with liver cancer, he was actually taking silymarin, which is the active compound in milk thistle. And silymarin has been studied extensively for liver patients, both alcoholic, non-alcoholic, fatty liver, but also liver cancer patients. Of course, for my dad, it was just too late in the game. And he had that mass on his liver for years and years prior to, and he only admitted that when he was dying. And by the way, this is like so typical, right, of a guy who's a single guy and is just like sweeps it under the carpet and doesn't do anything. I'm pretty sure if my dad was in a relationship with a woman, she would have made him go and get it checked out immediately. So, but you know how that is. And I'm sure many of you here do exactly that. You are the one who's pushing your guy partner to get stuff done, right? I suspect that is the case with many of you. So so back to milk thistle. Silymarin and silybum are the active compounds in there, and they have an incredible efficacy for supporting the liver. You can even take silymarin or milk thistle before you go out drinking. Like if you're gonna be going to some party, you're gonna be eating too much, you're gonna be drinking too much, it's actually a protective mechanism as well. So you can actually take it as a protector. So it protects your liver from toxins, but research has also shown there's some really cool studies showing how people working in agricultural places where there's a lot of chemicals and a lot of being sprayed on the land, how they use silymarin to detox them and protect them further from further damage from these chemicals. And so they are really quite wonderful. The other thing that silymarin does is helps to rejuvenate the liver and helps to grow back the liver cells, which is pretty incredible. So in herbal medicine, I mean, milk thistle is like one of the top liver herbs, I would say, especially from a regenerative perspective. Burdock root, dandelion root will definitely be some of the other. Gentian will be some of the other ones, but milk thistle is definitely one of the top ones. The other cool thing is that we have in a daily liver detox is NAC. So NAC, as you may know, it's and by the way, thank goodness that FDA is allowing to sell it now, because we could not put the product out until that ban was lifted. So thank goodness that got lifted, because NAC is pretty amazing. NAC helps you to produce glutathione, right? And is actually it's a way cheaper compound. And the cool thing is then compared to glutathione, and glutathione is notoriously bad at getting into your gut. And so there is some liposomal glutathione that's supposed to be very effective, but it's also very expensive. Compared to NAC, which then your body naturally converts, and is not dependent on a lot of cofactors to convert that to glutathione, is pretty awesome. And the cool thing about glutathione, I always think of it this way: it's like a Pac-Man. Remember, for those of you who are like still at that age where you were playing computer games and stuff, like back in the day, like really simplistic ones, the Pac-Man would be like, remember there was like a Pac-Man going around and chomping things down, right? So I always think of glutathione as like a bunch of Pac-Men running around, just eating up the debris, the toxic debris in the body. Just to give you an example, if you and this is, by the way, this is recommended to take on an empty stomach, because that way you get the efficacy of what I'm talking about. Same as, in what's amazing about it is that when I was doing a house remodel here, was it like 2 years ago? I'm very sensitive to dust, right? And so there was dust everywhere, of course, and I was living upstairs. So as much as the contractor was trying to mitigate it, it wasn't very successful a lot of the time. And I still had to come down here, downstairs to do some stuff. And I remember feeling like my chest was really tight, and I just started feeling really tired. And I was like, man, this continues, I'm going to get sick, because it's just, I felt like the toxic load on my body was huge. And so I had some NAC in the cabinet, and I thought I will take some. And I took 900 milligrams. That's a recommended dose. And it was literally within an hour that I just felt like my whole body just was able just to process all these toxins and just get rid of it. And so I started taking NAC from that point on throughout the construction period, and that really helped a lot. Before I go on, let's see if we have any questions about, actually, let me just finish talking about the other two compounds. So we also have selenium in it, 200 micrograms, which is, like, if you have Hashimoto's disease, that's a really great dose to use as well. It's known to lower antibodies. And the reason why we formulated that together with selenium is because these 4 compounds, selenium, octysol, NAC, and alpha lipoic acid, which I haven't told you about yet, they have like a special relationship of those 4 of them working together to protect the liver from antioxidative damage, to help to regenerate it, to help to for the detoxification pathways to work better. So that's one of the things that we have found through research, and is actually really quite amazing. Somebody is saying, Sloan is saying, I've been told that your liver can become dependent on herbs if you take them often. What are your thoughts on that? I think that's sort of rubbish, actually. We should be doing things every day. It's like saying, your body's going to get dependent on good food, right? So don't do it. I mean, that's kind of nonsense, isn't it? So I would say that's absolutely not true. In fact, especially if somebody is struggling with a lot of the symptoms we talked about, I would say that's even every reason to be doing that on a daily basis. Some of the longest living people do bitter stuff every day, a little bit every day, and in order to exactly to stimulate, to constantly be stimulating the liver. Okay, let's put some questions, Jan. Jan is helping me today. Is this something men can take? Absolutely, yes. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing in here that men can't do. Does detoxing your liver help? Sorry, Jen, let me just take one from Instagram here. Does detoxing your liver help lower your cholesterol? Absolutely. So you're talking about the LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, right? Absolutely, yes, it can. And especially if you combine it with a fairly clean diet, it really does quite a lot of wonderful things. Absolutely. So that's one of the organs that's highly responsible for lipid metabolism. That's one of the symptoms I read about before. Okay, sorry. So let's go on to the next question. So my biliary tree branches attack themselves, and constantly my bowel doesn't flow as efficiently as it should. The detoxification process isn't efficient. We always hear the liver, can regenerate, and I have been told the biliary tree cannot. Common knowledge. I'm wondering if you have suggestions to reverse this kind of autoimmune process. Yeah, so it's really, it's like, with Hashimoto's disease, right? It's or Graves' disease. It's really not the thyroid that is the center of attention, but it's really the immune system that becomes the center of attention. So I would suggest to really focus on addressing the autoimmune component of it. There are some, if you've done some basic things like the AIP and stuff, that might be a paleo for autoimmunity is a good start. Dr. Terry Walls, WAHL, has incredible resources. She's the one who had MS and is fully functional now. She has wonderful resources. The Walls protocol addresses all sorts of autoimmunity, and it doesn't have to be MS. Actually, it's really for anyone with very advanced autoimmune conditions. So those are the things I would suggest for you to focus on. Okay, and then we have Christy saying, I've been completely high ALT and GTT. I don't drink at all, but doctor says it's mold. I've tried 4 years to get better. Any advice? So if this is mold, then it's true that liver can be impacted in a huge way by mold. I'm not a mold expert. There's several experts out there about mold. Dr. Beth O'Hara is one of them. Dr. Jill Carnahan is another one. So look up those resources. But is that certainly, then the liver is not so much of the organ that, well, it's actually, it depends on who you talk to, because it's like, some practitioners like to work on the liver in order for the mold and to be detoxed. Others like to work on getting you out of the moldy situation and then work on the mold pathways before the liver. So I think you need to work with somebody who really specializes in that. Okay, next question. I've been diagnosed with breast cancer in late 21, chemo, double mastectomy, and radiation, clean path reports. Had both estrogen receptor positive and HER2 cancers. Currently on an estrozone for 5 years. I read that some of the herbs are detrimental to my well-being based on cancer type. I'm afraid to take things like milk thistle. Does the book address that? Terry, so can we just put that back on, that comment? I just want to see what she... So I mean, one of the big things I would suggest, I'm good, Jen, thank you. Terry, I would say one of the big things is to work with a functional oncologist who looks at things on the, from a prism of marrying Western medicine with other modalities such as herbalism and diet. And then you can work on that. Milk thistle can be slightly estrogenic, right? And so can be, I think the other herbs you're probably referring to would be things like black cohosh and red clover and red raspberry leaf, right? And they all have estrogenic properties. In fact, red clover, for example, in Germany is one of the first herbs that's given to women who are having hot flashes because their estrogen is low. And it's like a natural, gentle way of elevating your estrogen levels by taking red clover. And so, even herbalists don't get it right. And so there is a belief that just because an herb is estrogenic is going to be, its issue is counterindicated for people with estrogen receptor positive breast cancer. And that cannot be further from truth. And so I would suggest for you to do a little bit more research on it. And the short version of that is that just because something has estrogen, like flaxseed is a phytoestrogen as well, it doesn't make it bad for us. That's not what feeds the cancer. To understand the function of breast cancer, you got to understand that, first of all, there is a DNA damage that happened. And then there is estrogen dominance of the dirty estrogens that have been incorrectly metabolized by the body that are causing the growth of the tumor in the breast tissue. And a DNA damage can happen because of stress, toxicity, poor diet, lack of sleep, right? Chronic inflammation the person is experiencing. But on the other hand, the estrogen that makes it grow is not the estrogen that's found in flaxseed. It's not the estrogen that's found in red clover. Is the estrogen metabolites, which, by the way, I hope that on a regular basis, Terry, you're getting Dutch test done, DUTCH. We talked about it in our webinar a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Alan Hopkins on how to order these tests and what Dutch test shows you. One of the things that you will see in a Dutch test is the metabolites, the 2, 4, and 16 estrogen metabolites. And that's really what you're going to pay attention to, because those are the ones that are causing the damage and not the innocent little estrogen, phytoestrogen that's found in the herbs. The only thing I will say about breast cancer, like treatments and herbs, is that there are herbs that are contraindicated during chemo, for example, or radiation, because they can mitigate the results of that. There are also certain herbs that will mitigate the work of some of the medications that you're taking. So that's something that you need to, and because I'm on a public space, I cannot be discussing these sort of things. I can get into big trouble. So talking to a functional oncologist might be a really great idea. All right, let's then do another one. Does bad liver cause bloating and stop you from losing weight? Absolutely, it can be a big contributing factor. So, I mean, think of it this way. The liver is like your filter. Think of it this way, right? Let's say you live in a place where the water outside is just really terrible, right? It's just really polluted. It's got a lot of gunk in it. And then and then you, in order for the water to come into your house, you put a filter, right? And the filter is what guarantees you have clean water to bathe in, wash your clothes in, and drink. And so the liver is exactly like that. Is the filter, that filters out what is not beneficial to you. So it can have, weight loss is a complex issue, because obviously if it was straightforward, we wouldn't be having weight issue in this country, right? But it's definitely, you put it this way, you guys, you will not, the worst things that will happen if you take care of your liver is that nothing would happen. You know what I mean? Like, you cannot hurt yourself unless you're doing some crazy ass detoxes, which I never recommend here in this space, right? But by taking something like milk thistle, NAC, selenium, alpha-lipoic acid, right? This thing is not gonna hurt you. Okay. Yes, it is recorded to listen later. So we just have to hang up, and it's gonna be available on YouTube, Facebook, and as well as Instagram. Let me see if there's any questions coming in. What are the questions that I want to answer? Somebody's asking, do you take the liver detox supplement every day forever or for limited time? I would say this supplement, the daily, which by the way, on Instagram, we have it in our bio link. Just click on our bio link. Is it right on top? This is something I would suggest. This is for 60 days. Just take it and then stop and just see how you feel. This is not a supplement that I recommend for you to be taking in forever. There are certain forever supplements that I personally recommend. If you guys saw, I turned 50 on the 5th of January, so 21 days, 3 weeks ago, and we created the Thriving 50s kit, right? Those are things that I recommend on a daily basis. B vitamins, magnesium, right? Zinc. There's 2 types of magnesium is in there. And then, things like that I recommend highly to take on a daily basis, because the food we are consuming, unfortunately, is really, really depleted from these sort of things. So you can't get away with it. But with the liver stuff, the way I look at this is like, you're giving your body, your liver, some TLC for a short period of time, and let it just enjoy the benefit of that, and see whether you can sustain good health or not. So, and then if it's after 2 months, if it doesn't work, then you can continue. But most people find it's actually super helpful to do it short term and then stopping that. And that will be, I think, also my wish for you is for you to really kind of kickstart your liver health, right, with a good supplement, but also continue on with a really nice clean diet that's low in sugar, that is minimizing alcohol, minimizing coffee, eating far less processed carbohydrates, cooking a lot more food, most of your food coming from like real cooked food at home, right? This is the kind of stuff that really helps you to maintain really good health, and your liver is going to love it forever. Okay, let's see what else we've got there. Does this work for detox estrogen receptor breast cancer? Yes, so definitely yes. So this daily liver detox is sort of like everyday, cleaning product for your liver, right? If you want to go deeper into like binding up specifically estrogens, we have a kit called the Estrogen Reset Kit, Elizabeth. That's on our website on wellena.com. And if you just go to like shop by conditions and you go to estrogen dominance, because remember, estrogen receptor positive breast cancer, that's due to estrogen dominance, right? So and so there's a whole kit that we created for that, and it contains DIM, calcium diglucarate, and sulforaphane. And that's specifically designed. By the way, sulforaphane is just amazing. There's so much research for, which by the way is just so stupid, but we cannot show this on our website, because if we show the studies on sulforaphane, how sulforaphane kills breast cancer cells, stem cells of breast cancers, and how it prevents it, then it's going to get us into trouble with the FDA, which is kind of ridiculous. So I'm not supposed to talk about it, but I'm taking the liberty of just telling you that during live. But sulforaphane, which originates from broccoli sprouts, is just amazing at that. So highly recommend that. So you can take that in combination with the Estrogen Reset Kit. Okay. I have hemochromatosis and also take estrogen. I also have been told I have non-alcoholic fatty liver. Would estrogen be bad to have? I mean, first of all, hemochromatosis is something you need to work with a specialist to lower your iron levels, right? Because there's a genetic component to that. And then when you say taking estrogen, it's too. Jen, I'm not comfortable answering that because it's just too many questions here. Like, is it bioidentical estrogen? Is it a synthetic estrogen? And so let's just focus on liver, maybe here, liver questions. I think you meant, is it TATCA? What is TATCA and where does it play a role in liver health? I've heard it helps with poor liver function, but not sure what it is. I've used TATCA before when I was doing a parasite cleanse, and so I think you need to research this a little bit more. I'm not a specialist in. I think you met TATCA. I'm not a specialist in that, so I'll pass on that one. What's our website? So our educational website is hormones with an S, hormonesbalance.com. And our supplement store is Wellena, WELLENA.com. Jen, do you want to just maybe do a little better at the bottom with the Wellena.com? Let's see what we have coming up on Instagram. So I want to ask you guys, when I was reading the symptoms of liver issues, has any one of you been like, oh yeah, that could be me? That's definitely that's something that I've been experiencing. Or have you done anything? Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention about liver health that's really helpful is you can do castor oil packs. What about, this is a good question from Dorothy, if we could do that one. What about hysterectomy and doing a liver detox? Absolutely. So most reasons, Dorothy, I don't know what the reason why I'm assuming, maybe just if you are comfortable, share with us why you had a hysterectomy. But typically women have a hysterectomy due to fibroids, due to polyps, due to some kind of cancer cells growth, right? And so that's the issue. And so depending on why the cause, there was a cause for hysterectomy, is that all the things that I mentioned just now, that is due to estrogen dominance. So it's so sad that in my family there's a very pathetic joke that we don't have many women who still have the uterus after 50. Because unfortunately, I inherited both genes from both sides of my family, from my mother and my dad, of being a really poor estrogen detoxifier, right? So I have this SNP called COMT, COMT. I have a slow COMT, meaning that I'm very slow in detoxifying estrogens, especially the 16. And so the problem with that is that, it makes me a lot more susceptible to estrogenic kind of cancers compared to anyone else. And that's the reason why a lot of women in my family have lost their uteruses to the reasons that I just mentioned. And so far I'm 50. My uterus is doing just fine. I'm planning to hold on to it as long as I can. And so can you. And so one of the big things is that the underlying causes of hysterectomy are due to estrogen dominance, the different conditions. And so my very much a recommendation is for you to get my book, Overcoming Estrogen Dominance, and liver detox is certainly one of them. If you want to try the daily liver detox, that's available right now. Estrogen Reset Kit is also another really great kit that specifically was designed to clearing estrogens for those of you who are struggling with symptoms of estrogen dominance, and it does not come easy for you to detox them. So Mama Gal is saying, yes, I have environmental allergies, gallbladder removed in menopause. Dutch test shows below levels of all hormones for even menopause. So it seems my liver is struggling. Yeah, so that's one thing. But the other thing is also, if you have no hormones, then work with somebody who can help you with that, right? You can do things like naturally raise your estrogen levels by using phytoestrogens like flaxseed. There is, great estrogen sources from things like Siberian rhubarb, flaxseed, red clover. I mean, some of the herbs and foods like that. Just having a couple of tablespoons of flaxseed every day is really not going to hurt you. And it also contains fantastic fiber, both soluble and insoluble fiber. Flaxseed does, which the liver loves. So that's another really good reason to consider that. And then getting yourself on progesterone. That's something that we have a progesterone in our store. My favorite is the cream. We also have it in the oil form, and that can be life-changing for women as well. So supporting your liver is one thing, but it's not going to raise your hormone levels, right? So your hormone levels will have to be raised either by herbs or by bioidentical hormones, especially if you're really feeling it, right? That's the thing. That's the most important thing. One thing is looking at the labs. The other thing is also matching that with how are you feeling? Because the worst thing is when the labs look normal, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this. My labs are looking normal, but this person is falling apart, right? Or on the other hand, is also like my labs are looking terrible, but I'm feeling fine. There's also I think there's no reason to panic there either. Does the liver have anything to do with low blood iron levels? So not a detox question, but from what I understand, no, I don't think so. That's something that actually iron levels is something I want to do another call on this with a friend of mine who specializes in iron levels in women. So stay tuned for that. I've actually been reaching out to her, trying to schedule something. But from what I understand, there is not that much of a connection there. Since flaxseed shouldn't be good for cardiovascular disease, would it be okay to grind it? Yes, absolutely. And there's actually quite a bit of myth around that, that fiber should be completely eliminated. I would suggest for you to do a little bit more research on functional DV, and see whether you can come up with something that actually mitigates that belief that there should be no fiber when somebody has diverticulosis. Veronica says, I'm sensitive to flax. I understand it's likely due to my liver not detoxing properly. In the case of flax, with other herbs, I should avoid them, or even though they aren't the root cause of. So here's an interesting thing. First of all, if you're sensitive to something, you just don't eat it, right? And the other thing about flaxseed is that I have found that maybe 1 out of 20 women have a problem with flaxseed, right? And so we use flaxseed a lot in our practice for doing like seed rotation. And if you want to learn how to do seed rotation in Instagram, we have that on our bio link now under free downloads. It's really powerful to help you balance your hormones. However, especially elevate your estrogen levels very, very gently. The problem with flax seeds, I see there's like 1 in 20 people have a problem with that. And the reason that happens is because what I have found is that when you have a poor microflora and lack diversity of bacteria in the microbiome, you're not breaking down those lignans in the flaxseed. That's what can cause a problem there. So if you can't eat it, don't eat it. However, it's also, kind of brings up a question. Can you do something to add some maybe probiotics and diversify your gut flora in order to be able to eat it? And the other thing is that, look, if you still can't, then you just go to other herbs that have estrogenic abilities. Like if estrogen is something, gentle form of estrogen is really what you are looking for, right? So I've mentioned some of those herbs already, like Siberian rhubarb and red clover and black cohosh, right? Those are like some of the classical herbs to raise estrogen levels in women. Can you talk about vitamin C in the liver health? Yeah, so I mean, vitamin C, it's not on its own. It's nothing like, I mean, when we work with the liver, typically it's like we work with the liver, with the bitters, with things that contain dihydroxyethylamine, right? Sulforaphane, those are bigger things. I mean, I think vitamin C does play some kind of a role, but this is not, to me, this is not like something that is an essential. Why vitamin C, typically from a hormonal perspective, we look at it more from, it helps with progesterone production, it supports the immune system, it helps with collagen production for the skin, and for your gut. And so a lot of things start improving actually when you take vitamin C. Do you need liver detox after surgery getting gut back to normal? That's a great question, Elizabeth. And a lot of people after surgery really have they have an onset of a lot of health issues, digestive issues, and I certainly had that. I don't know if you guys know this, but 5 years ago I had a double hip replacement done, and so I've been struggling with my hips ever since I was a kid. There was an accident at birth, and my mom had a very difficult birth, and they injured my hips, and so I never fully recovered. And to add insult to injury, I was a big athlete most of my life, so that was, so that didn't make it any better. So I ended up having a double hip replacement on the same day, which was one of the best decisions ever. So I think, this is where allopathic medicine really plays a huge role. I regained my quality of life in ways that I can't even explain. But what it did do was I got a full-on SIBO after that, and so definitely there is, some of us, I'm definitely more on the sensitive side of things. So preparing for surgery, if you go to hormonesbalance.com and just look for surgery, as there's a whole article I wrote there, how I prepared for surgery, and then what I did after the surgery. So one of the pointers I want to give you that quickly binds up a lot of the chemicals, a lot of the prescription drugs that they pump you with, right? They have to prepare you for surgery, and the painkillers and all that. Your liver is really struggling during that time. So calcium D-glucarate is an amazing compound to bind up all of that. Just make sure you're taking that away from like prescription medications, because it really binds up compounds very aggressively. And so this is a pointer that I got from a friend of mine who used to work as an emergency physician. And she said that whenever they did very invasive procedures to a patient, right? Because, in ER, it's like typically they just like really bombard you with a lot of stuff. And they are, and then, so what happened was so calcium D-glucarate was something that she was always giving her patients afterwards to bind up all the toxins. I apologize. I think Jen, is calcium D-glucarate out of stock right now? I think it is. It is. So you can, if you can wait until, Jen, could you put it in private chat? When is our delivery date for calcium D-glucarate? In 2 weeks' time. Okay, if you can just wait for a couple of weeks, then calcium D-glucarate is going to be back then. Hey, you guys, having inventory problems is actually something that most people experience right now, and it's not easy, I can tell you that. So it's not like we don't want to do it. It's just it can be just extremely challenging. All right, I'll do one more questions before we wrap up, and that is, how often do you do the castor oil packs? Sue is asking, hey Sue, so there's so much to say about castor oil packs. Can I ask you to visit us on Hormones Balance, hormonesbalance.com website, and just look for castor oil packs? And I did 3 interviews with Dr. Marzal, my really good friend, who makes some really wonderful packs. So you put it on your liver. She actually has some new ones now that cover the uterus as well, and some for hair. And so we're going to have her on very soon to talk about these things. And so we go there all about like how often, how to do it, how to wash those pads, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of really interesting information right there at your fingertips. Okay, well, hey, you guys, I hope this is helpful. Take care of your liver. I mean, like I said, it's a very hard-working organ. Imagine like 1.5 liters, so 1.5 pints of blood every single minute that's going through the liver. She's a hardworking girl, right? And then the second thing I want to, and to support it through really, a diet that's the best you can, right? Lowering the inflammation. I know Mona is saying over 500 functions. It does. Like we just scratched the surface today. It's probably a lot of things that we don't even know about. Another really interesting factor about the liver is that if you remove the liver within 18 minutes, the person is dead. That's how toxic you will become without the liver. Isn't that quite fascinating? So anyway, take care of your liver, and remember that apart from the diet and supplements and whatever you decide to do, the other big part is just stop being angry. just don't be angry, because remember, your liver is the anger organ. So put a hand on your liver, take a deep breath in, exhale, and smile to your liver. And it's just like all that anger just goes away. Feels good. All right. Hey, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, since we are close to that now. And take some good care of your liver this weekend. And I will see you soon. Bye for now.